marks back on that back table. Okay, so when we're working with triangles trying to decide if they are congruent, we're just going to state what's the obvious, like the commercial Captain Obvious. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
There. Okay. So what's the obvious thing that we see? What something that's obviously congruent in this picture? We have what, Cameron?
2 triangles.
Well, we have 2 triangles, but what's congruent?
Oh.
A pair of sides and a pair of angles, right? So I'm going to say S, comma, because I have 1 pair of sides that are congruent. And then I also have, because of the dashes, 1 pair of angles that are congruent. So this dash, those single dashes means I've got a side that's a pair of sides congruent, and those single arcs means we've got an angle congruent. Okay, anything obvious there? No, nothing else obvious. Now we're going to look at the picture. Is there anything else we can conclude from the picture that would be congruent? Yes. They share a side, so that means that side's congruent. And that, what property is that? So we're going to write reflexive property allows us to say that they share that side, so it will be equal for both triangles. So that gives us another pair of sides. Now just because I wrote S, comma, A, comma, S doesn't mean it's necessarily side, angle, side postulate. We're just listing what we know here. Then we're going to take a look at where the information is, where the angles are, the sides are, to see if it's side, angle, side. So in order for it to be side, angle, side, the angle has to be in between the 2 sides that are congruent. So here I've got this side and that side are congruent. Is this angle in between those 2 sides? No, it would need to be this angle, right? That's equal to that angle. So what we actually have is we have 2 sides that are congruent, and we have an angle that's congruent. That's not inside the 2 sides. And is that a way to prove triangles are congruent? No, that's like the big X on the American Idol or Who's Got Talent, whatever that show is. They give them X's, right? Okay, no. So we're going to do that, and we're going to say no. Triangles are not congruent. All right, so let's do the second pair of triangles. There you go. Draw those down. So what is the obvious? What would Captain Obvious tell us that we have? How many pairs? 2 sides by the 2 dash marks and the 3 dash marks. So, whoa, I don't want that color. So I have side and side. Those are the obvious, right? Is there anything else I can conclude from this picture, Erica? They share a side, right? So it's going to be equal for both triangles. So I'm going to put just 1 dash mark because no, they haven't used a 1 dash yet. And what property is that allows us to say that that's going to be equal to itself? So let's write that. We've got reflexive property happening here. That gives us a 3rd side. Do we have a side, side, side postulate? Yes. So we can state that the 2 triangles are congruent by side, side, side postulate. Okay, let's draw these next 2 triangles. Whoa. What's the obvious things that we have here congruent? So we have a pair of angles and a pair of sides that we know are congruent by the marks. Is there anything else we can conclude with these 2 triangles? Any other sides that we can say that are equal, or angles that we can say that are equal because of the position or any other information? No. Do we have an angle side or a side angle postulate or theorem? No. So red X, this is no. These 2 triangles are not congruent. And here's number 7. What do we know for sure?
We have 2 pairs of congruent sides.
So we have
1 pair of angles.
Two pairs of congruent sides, one pair of congruent angles. Okay, so in our postulates or theorems, we have where we have two sides and an angle, we have side, angle, side. That is a legitimate postulate, right? And we have side, side, angle, which is not. That's not a postulate. That's telling us no, they are not congruent. That's an X. So what we have to figure out is where this angle is placed. If it's placed as the included angle on both triangles, we would say side, angle, side. So on the first angle on the first triangle is the angle in between the two sides that are congruent. Yes, so it's the included angle. On the second triangle is the angle that's congruent, the included angle, the one between the two sides that are congruent. No. So it has to be included on both triangles in order for it to be congruent. So this is another no. All right, number 9, and then we'll go do our evens, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. So we have two pairs of sides that are congruent. That's obvious, right? So is there anything that we can conclude about these two triangles? What? Okay, what angle is congruent? The vertical angles. So we can say that this angle is equal to that angle. Let's write vertical. That's how we know that those two angles are equal. So that gives us a pair of angles. So we don't want side, side, angle. We want side, angle, side in order to say they're congruent. But so that means the angle has to be the included angle. Is that the one that's in between these two sides? On both triangles? Yes. So we can say that they are congruent by the side, angle, side postulate. All right. Let's go back up to the top and do our evens now.
There's two angles.
Two pairs of angles, right? And we know that from the two different arc markings. So we have one arc, those two angles are equal. Two arcs means those two angles are equal. So that's obvious. Is there anything else we can conclude from these two triangles? Yes.
They share a side.
They share a side, which means it's the reflexive property allows us to say that those two that side is equal to itself in both triangles. So that gives us an S. So we do have angle, angle, side theorem. We have angle, side, angle postulate. So which of the two is it going to be? Well, if the side is in between the two congruent angles, it's angle, side, angle. Is that the case here? Yeah, it's in between the two. So these are going to be congruent by angle, side, angle. Oops, not 3, 4. Easton, what's obvious?
One side.
And
Two or one angle.
we have a pair of sides and a pair of angles that are congruent. Anything else we can conclude on this figure? Any other sides that we can say that are congruent? Any other angles? These two angles where two lines intersect are vertical, so vertical angles are congruent. So those two, because they're vertical, are equal. So that gives us another pair of angles. We have angle, angle, side. We have angle, side, angle. If the side is in between the two angles on both triangles, it's angle, side, angle. Is that the case here? Yep. So it is angle, side, angle postulate. Okay, let's do another one. Obvious. A pair of angles and a. So we have an angle. I did it again. We have a pair of angles that are congruent and a pair of sides that are obvious. Okay, and then can we conclude that any other sides are congruent? Any other angles? We have vertical again, right? So these two will be congruent. So we have a third piece of information that two angles are congruent. So we have angle side angle or angle angle side that we're looking at. Could be one of those, could be neither of those. So the side that's congruent, is that in between the two angles that are congruent? No, so we know it's not angle side angle. So now we're looking at angle angle side. We have to make sure that the side is the same for both triangles. So notice on this triangle, it is the side that has the one arc and no arc. Is that the same case on the other triangle? One arc and no arc. So then we can say it's angle angle side. Now if, let's just say that this would have been the marked side. This is the side that's made up of the two arc and the no arc. Here's the two arc and no arc side right here. It isn't marked. So in that case it would not be angle angle side. But because it is that side, the corresponding side as the same as this one, then we can say angle angle side. And I forgot to put vertical out here, didn't I? Okay. One more triangle. So we've got two pairs of sides that are congruent. And then is there anything we can conclude? They share a side. So by reflexive property, we can say that we have a third side that is congruent. And do we have an SSS postulate? We do. So the two triangles will be congruent. All right.